welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about one of my very favorite romance genres, and that's going to be paranormal romance. Alright, before I get into the meat of what I want to talk about, I do want to give an honorable mention, and yes, I know this is a little cheesy, but as like many of you, Twilight was the very first book that got me into vampires and my love for reading. So although this is not one that I'm recommending today, it is one that I've read over 12 times, literally each. And so I love this series. It will always have my heart because it did bring back my love for reading. After Twilight, whenever I was like 18 years old, and I'm 30 now, so I've got a little bit of age on me here. For like 10 years, I went on a binge and I read everything I could find that was vampires. I didn't care if it was YA or adult. Today, specifically, I'm going to be talking about adult vampire series that I recommend. And some of them may have other creatures in them. It may not just be all about vampires, but vampires is going to be the bulk of what I'm going to talk about. I've got 7 series to talk to you today, and some of these I know you're going to have heard of, and that's okay. But I hopefully at least 1 or 2 of these series you won't have heard of. Alright, so the first series I want to bring up is by Chloe Neal. The first one is Some Girls Bite, and this is her Chicagoland vampire series. This is a really neat series. It is more urban romance. It's not necessarily just like paranormal. There's a lot of suspense and fighting, and it's a really neat story. So there's like at least 9 books in the series that I know of, and I'm sure it has continued on. I kind of got out of it after 9, but I have read the series. I did really enjoy them. I binged read them whenever I did. It's a good series. Coming in at number 6 on my list is the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. And this series is about Mac and Barons, and the first, I believe it's 5 books, is about the same couple, and then it moves on to a second couple. I really enjoyed the first, I really enjoyed Mac and Barons. It is a very slow burn romance. It's kind of a hate to love romance. I really enjoyed this book. It is not necessarily vampires. This is more about the fae. So this is further down on my list because of that. I enjoyed the series, but it wasn't my very favorite. Coming in at number 5, I have Lee County Wolves. This is by Teresa Gableman, and this is a spinoff series of her first book, which is going to come later on. But I had to put this in here because this is also one of my favorite series. I love Teresa Gableman. She's one of my favorite authors. Her humor is amazing. The love stories in these, the spicy scenes are, they're sexy. And I totally adore Teresa Gableman. I have read everything she's ever written. I love her. This is one of the best series in general. And this is a spinoff, like I mentioned, of her first series, which I'm going to talk about here in just a little bit. Also, the reason why the series came in at number 5 for me is because this is about werewolves. And as much as I love werewolves, and there is some really interesting things that go on with the werewolves, I'm more of a vampire girl. And so that's the only reason this one was dropped down to number 5, is because I love my vampires. Coming in at number 4, Janine Frost Night Huntress series. This is the only series that I don't have physical copies of, and that's mainly because all of them that I found has just been mass market paperbacks, and I despise mass market paperback. Like literally the only mass market paperback I have is by J.R. Ward, and that's because that is the only series, or that's the only book in the series that is not in hardback. So anyway, that's the only reason I don't have this series. This follows Cat and Bones, and I have read the series at least twice. I love this. It is hilarious, and it's full of action, and it's jam-packed, and it's got sexy scenes in it, and it's literally got everything, guys. It is my favorite, one of my favorite series. So obviously coming in at number 4, we're getting into my very top, and the top 3 is books that I can't hardly decide between. I love them all equally. So Janine Frost is way up there for me. I highly recommend the series. There is several in it, and then they have spin-offs following other characters. It's a whole world, and it is amazing. If you haven't heard of this series, it is an urban fantasy series. And I highly recommend that you pick it up. The romance is amazing. The action is amazing. Everything about the series is just absolutely wonderful. So pick that one up if you haven't heard of it. All right, so now we're getting into my top 3 favorites. And like I mentioned before, it's so hard to choose between the 3, putting them in order. I think I'm gonna go with Teresa Gableman as my number 3. And that is so hard to choose. I'm telling you, she could easily be number 1. Okay, first of all, this cover is horrendous, but the series, the actual books are so worth it. So good. Her humor, this is a vampire series. There is at least 12 books that I know of, and then now she's doing spin-offs where she's doing the women's perspective instead of the guys. So it's actually their story, because some of the women are now turning into these hunters. And so anyway, this series is truly amazing. It's got plenty of action. It's got plenty of romance, suspense, and the humor is so on point. This is one of the funniest series I've ever read in my entire life. I binge read the entire series in less than a month. And I think there's like total of like 19 books, 18 books, something like that in the entire series. I read them in an entire month. Just back to back. I was reading a book a day. I just could not stop reading this series. I read them last year for the first time in January of 2018. And I'm already wanting to reread this series because it is just that good. Damon is the first book, and I'm telling you, from the first chapter, you will get hooked, and her writing style just draws you in. I cannot recommend Teresa Gableman enough. This is an author that I don't hear much about in the paranormal romance genre. I don't see a lot of people talking about her, and that makes me so sad because she is so good. So this is a series that I highly recommend you pick up. All right, guys, we're getting super, super close. And coming in at number 2 is my Midnight Breed series by Laura Adrian. Oh, you guys, what can I say? This book, this whole series, I adore Laura Adrian. She writes, there's got to be 20 books in the series by now, between the main couples and then the spin-offs. And so this is not a small romance series to get into, but this is about vampires, and they are warriors, and they're tattooed in a way, and they have breed mates. So these women are born with a birthmark, and whenever they're born with that birthmark, they can mate with the vampire warriors. And whenever they do that, whenever a male bites a woman with this mark, she becomes his mate automatically. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it is so good. So good. That's all I can say. I don't want to give too much about the series away. They have some serious action going on. There's some really big people they're fighting in this, and you want them to come out victorious. And once one is defeated, then an even bigger opponent comes up, and it is delicious. It is so good. I've read the series at least 3 times. One of my very favorite series of all time. Probably my top two. Literally, this series and the next series I'm going to bring up are my top two series books of all time. I absolutely adore Laura Adrian. I love her books. I've got them all in hardback, the ones that I could get. I love the series. The series coming in at number 1 is, of course, J.R. Ward, Black Dagger Brotherhood. The series is my heart, my soul. As you can see, I've got the hardcover for the first book, which you know is going for like $300 and $400 a piece now. And yes, I spent $100 just for this book because I am that obsessed. This follows, once again, a bunch of warriors. I will say that Black Dagger Brotherhood and Midnight Breed series came out about the exact same time, and the series is similar. So if you love J.R. Ward, you will love Laura Adrian because the books are a lot alike, but they're different. I mean, but the plot line and the idea of them is so similar that if you like J.R. Ward, I promise you will like Laura Adrian. Okay, so with this, it's a group of warriors, and they have a king, and this is his book, him and Beth. Beth is a half-breed vampire. She doesn't know she's a vampire, and her father comes to the king, Wrath, and says, hey, I have a daughter, and she is going to be going through the change soon, and I need you to help her. And the king is an asshole and says, not gonna happen, no way, she doesn't need me, I sure as hell don't need her. And then later that night, the father dies. And vampires, it's super hard to kill them, but he is one who passes away. And the story goes on from there. Of course, Wrath chooses to go and protect Beth and go through the change with her, and this is their love story. I will say the first book, whenever I very first read it back in like 2012, something like that. It was around 2012. This is one of the first series I got into right after Twilight, and I almost put this book down. I almost DNF'd it because, let me just tell you, the names in this, whenever you first start reading them, you're like, that is so fucking cheesy, because it's Wrath and Rage and Zadist, and I mean, just these outrageous names that it's like, what are you even saying? But series is so worth it. Every single book makes me cry, except for maybe this first one. But after that, book 3, Zadist, is of course my favorite, and the series just, it gets me every time, guys. Every single time I read a new book by her, I am bawling my eyes out by the end of the book. It's a guarantee for me. I will always cry during a J.R. Ward Black Dagger Brotherhood book. So, this is my number 1 series of all time. It is a huge series to get into, and I know it can feel overwhelming, but it is so worth it. I promise you will not regret reading this series. Do you have any paranormal romance series to recommend for me? Please leave them down in the comments below. And I plan on reading a couple of new paranormal romance series soon, so hopefully I'll have even more recommendations to give. That's going to be it for me today, guys. I hope you have a great day.